Well, isn't this fun tonight? I'm grateful that you guys are here. We get to wrap up this series of the study of the book of James this evening, and it has been a really great one. Practical daily advice for just daily life lived out in really basic ways, and it's been a challenging and awesome series, so I'm grateful to have a chance to close it out tonight. If you're like me, then this series got you really curious about James. Like, who is James? I know we've touched on it a little bit, but I kind of took a deep dive this week and got really curious about who James was. And we know he was one of four brothers or half brothers to Jesus. And I just want to pause there. Like, it's really awesome to think about the fact that there may have been no one closer to Jesus, no one with a closer account of Jesus. And then to think on top of that, we have a book written by this man who had such an amazing close relationship with his very own brother being Jesus. Wow. Why don't we talk about James and this book more often, right? But he was more than just a brother. Later, he became a follower. James was one of those people who got to see the resurrected Jesus right before his eyes, and it changed him like it would probably you or me. In that moment, he went from being just a brother of Jesus to being one who emulated him, one who began to promote his cause after his death. He began to build up the church, and he was named one of the three pillars of the church, right up there with Peter and John. He would go on to be the pastor of the church in Jerusalem. But here's what I found most fascinating about James. They wrote about James in history books. Church historians took account of his life. And do you want to know what they said about him? They said he was on his knees in prayer. They said that he was known for year after year, day after day, regularly finding himself in the temple, and he was always found kneeling in prayer, to the point that in history books it says that James' knees were all torn up. That's what's known about him, that he had bruised, torn up, damaged, scarred knees from praying so much. Can you imagine being remembered that way? How do your knees look? This is a metaphor. Today's memory verse is confess your sins to each other and pray for each other so you may be healed. Would you say it out loud with me? Confess your sins to one another and pray for one another so that you may be healed. So this very verse that we are memorizing today, it isn't just something that James taught. It isn't some flippant comment that he made one day or wrote in a book. It's his lifeblood. You see, when I hear this memory verse, I picture those bruised and calloused knees. What was it that brought him to his knees? Well, he was the leader of the church in Jerusalem. And it wasn't easy. They were gathering in secret at that time. They were just really trying to stay alive because you could literally be put to death for proclaiming that Jesus was Lord. In fact, James himself later met that fate. He was martyred for proclaiming that Jesus was Lord. But in the midst of his leadership of the church, James writes this letter. And in the portion that we're studying today, he advises the church to pray for one another. You see, James isn't just saying that prayer today is between God and you. He doesn't say this is a private thing. He says, we want you to pray for one another. He says, reach out and talk to someone when you are struggling, because when you do, something healing, something transformative can happen within a community. James is essentially telling the church, you guys need each other. You're better together. Don't try to do life alone.